Hi everyone, my name is Artemi and I'm joined with my Northeastern colleagues from all across the world. You can see the flags on the screen. Today we're joined together in our Global Giggle podcast. We're going to talk about the life of international students living abroad. So yeah, guys, how are you today? And
Hello.
Hi, we're doing good. Thank you for
Um,
inviting us.
Thank
yeah,
you.
so do you guys have anyone wants to start off with their experiences and topics you want to talk about?
Yes. So I want to start first. I want to ask you all guys, like, how did your educational backgrounds from your countries differ from the educational system in the United States? And like, do you think any kind of power distance had anything to do with it, or any specific reason? You let us know.
So yeah, I think coming from Pakistan, we had the British system. So we kind of had our exams at the end of the year. So there was only one final exam that would count towards 100% of the final grade. But coming to the US, we had these semesters, and the grade was covered with homeworks, quizzes, exams, and stuff like that. And we did like a lot of collectivism and stuff like that. So I think that coming to the US, it was a little bit harder for me because in Pakistan we just used to like study for April, and that was it. But now I have to like do my homeworks weekly, be on my A game all the time. It kind of like made things easier because you are not dependent on like that 100% of the final exam, because if you're sick, everything is gone. But over here, if you skip one quiz, you'll be fine. You can still like get an A if you like work towards it. So it was a bit hard for me to come into like practice, but then I really like the Pakistani the US system for education. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, going off on what you just said, Hassan, I was also like surprised by, not surprised, but like I mean, there's clearly a difference between the French educational system and the American one. And I'd say more in like considering the power distance that Carlos mentioned earlier. I feel like in France, relationships with teachers or like people at like a higher hierarchy is like way more formal than it is in the US. Like in France, we have like a formal way to address people who are considered as above you. So we use the different different ways of addressing people, and that really counts in like respect, and the teacher is not your friend and they'll make you understand it if you use the wrong pronoun, for example. Whereas here, I mean, I was like so much surprised by how much time teachers allocate to help students, and also all the resources that they provide you to succeed, and every student actually matters. So yeah, I'll say that the relationships here are way more informal than they are in France, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guys would agree with like in Russia is the same thing. So there's a lot of hierarchy in the educational system. Like your professor is like the most important thing, and they call the shots. Just going off of that, like introducing some other Hofstede dimension, something like collectivism or individualism. Like back at home, you couldn't even really select your own classes. Like whatever you were given, you would have to study, whereas in the US, when you come here, you have a certain amount of classes that are required, but after that you have as much variation as you like. And that talks a lot about like individualism. You can choose what you would like to study and when and what times. There's different allocation of classes, and that's really something that I enjoyed here, comparing to where I came from. I don't know if that's the same for you guys, but yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I found it very interesting because for me, coming from Honduras, I adapted to the U.S. system very easily because I studied my whole life in Honduras in an American school. So we followed the same educational system as in the United States. So we followed the same grading system. It was like the same format of doing these exams throughout the whole semester. We had different classes. The teachers always offered us office hours. So even though Honduras and the United States were very different, adapting to the educational system was pretty much the same. So it was not a hard transition per se. So that's why for me it wasn't hard to like being a freshman. It's very common for people to struggle with the classes and also, but I adapted very easily to the Northeastern educational system. So I found it very interesting that coming from different countries, it may be different totally. So yes.
And I'm actually wondering now that you mentioned like the sort of like clash of culture that can eventually happen. I remember I was very like surprised by the way people would perceive me or the way I was acting, compared to like what a typical like American behavior was. Like I know for a fact that as like French people have like a very indirect like communication style. Like we can be very direct, but at the same time there are a lot of like things would only show. It would be in our attitude and like in our, you know, like the way we would stand, the way we would just look at the person. You can read a lot of like emotions or even opinions on one's face. And I feel like although here, people, I mean, it's the Americans are reputed for easily losing their face compared to the Chinese race, for instance. I know that people told me several times that they could see like what I was thinking just by looking at my face because I would just like provide a lot of information.
But then like coming from South Asia, we cannot show what we are thinking. Like we always have to be respectful. Even if we don't like someone, we still need to be like, have a smile on our face and just like don't let them know that we don't like them. So that was like, being indirect and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting how you guys introduced the high and low context cultures into this, just basing off the Russian experience that I had. Personally, I actually would say that a lot of people are more individualistic back at home. So for me, it was really easy to come here and just express myself as I usually would. But yeah, it's interesting how you guys say that in your countries it might be a little different about just like having less of a verbal, but more of like facial maybe, or otherwise in Pakistan, it's yeah, it's more of like you don't really express your emotions in the same way. You kind of show your appreciation by like your body language and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a really interesting point.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
I'll,
like, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was saying, yeah, I also can relate with this because and in Honduras, because we also have a high context culture. We in Honduras we value a lot of relationships and we like try to be in good terms with every person that we know because at the end of the day we think them as a connection or as a possible person for doing business with or things like that. Meanwhile, in the United States, I think it's more like you're on your own. Like you have to do everything by your own, and it depends on you whether you want to do this or not. Meanwhile, in Honduras, I think you have more like support from your family and from people that you know just from having good relationships.
Yeah, I remember Artemi talking to me about this. Artemi, do you remember when you said that that was one of the main reasons why you came to the US?
Yeah, for sure. So uh personally, I chose to come to the US because first I went to study in the UK for my high school diploma, and I've just like created like this idea of coming to the US because there's a lot of opportunities and individualistic culture is very strong here. So based on like your achievements and your desires, you can get to um, much higher kind of status places rather than back at home. A lot depends, and it's still possible at home, but a lot depends on like your connections, just like people you know, and like whether they can put you into like a certain job. I think there's a lot of less of that here, and I really like the competition where it's based on your ability rather than uh, like outside factors like connections, for sure.
Mm.
Anyone else wants to add something?
No, I just thank you guys. Like it's super interesting to interact with one another and like just, you know, it's always interesting to see how you guys lived the transition from your home country to the US because we've all been through this. So I'm always curious to know what you guys went through.
Yeah, the same. And I think, even though we're from different countries, at the end of the day, there's always like a connection point where you know how to interact with each one of us. And obviously, coming from different backgrounds, we know that it's hard, but at the end of the day, we know how to adapt to situations, and that's why we're in Northeastern, that they're helping us adapt with different cultures and try
Mhm.
to team with different cultures, which is a great experience.
Adaptation is key.
Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope it was helpful to learn certain differences and ways to adapt to this American culture if you're coming here from abroad. Thank you to all the guests for your input, and we'll see you guys later.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.